Nerderotic.com.
I have been waiting to use that Wokeman thumbnail for quite some time, and over the weekend, my prayers were answered, and they dropped a Wokeman trailer at Comic Con, and it did not disappoint because it's going to be a complete woke fest. And we have a lot of questions answered with a Deadline article about Damon Lindelof as far as, is this canon to the comics or the film? And we found out it's canon to the comics. It's going to be a sequel to the 12-issue series by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, which is sacrilege to any comic fan. Now, they've already disgraced it with Before Watchmen and Doomsday Clock. I don't think they disgraced it with the film. I liked it quite a bit, but I would prefer that the TV show doesn't exist. But if it had to exist, I would rather it be a sequel to the film and not the comic book. So Damon Lindelof is involved. He is from Lost. I didn't like Lost. That was out after the first season, and I did not like The Leftovers. I was out after the first season. He is also from Bad Reboot, Jar Jar Abrams' Bad Reboot. Jar Jar Abrams, who now runs the WB and the DCEU. And it turns out the villain of the Watchmen is going to be, and this is going to be a shocker to y'all, I know, I hope you're all sitting down, white supremacy. Because according to Damon Lindelof, white supremacy is as big of a problem now as the Cold War was in the 80s. Really, Watchmen confronts white supremacy without grandiose solutions, says Damon Lindelof, TCA, by Dominic Patton. Wow, that looks like a fun trio right there. After dropping an Easter egg-rich Watchmen trailer during the spotlight of Comic-Con, Damon Lindelof today tore right into the heart of the upcoming HBO series based on Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' classic late 1980s comic. One of the biggest problems we have with our franchises today is we have people with very limited talent trying to tell a story that is way beyond anything they can do, and this is going to be the best example of that. Forget your politics. Watchmen is a political story. Of course it is. Alan Moore put a mirror to society, but he was telling a superhero story first. This will be a great example of good writer Alan Moore, who can put politics that people might not agree with, but present it in a way that you still want to read it. You are still entertained. And then we're going to have Damon Lindelof. So at this point, I would tell you to read Watchmen. Highly recommend it. Now, it's not going to have the same impact if you haven't been a comic book fan for a long time, but independently, it's still a very good story. And I think it's really important to read that before you watch this, so you know good writer versus bad writer. What in 2019 is the equivalent of the nuclear standoff between the Americans and the Russians? The sometimes punchy Leftovers co-creator postulated during the Watchmen panel at TCA on Wednesday. It is race and the police, Lindelof said, answering his own question as star Regina King and executive producer-director Nicole Castle, both Leftovers alums, sat next to him on stage at the Beverly Hilton. I just love it when elites who work for a giant billion-dollar corporation talk about our societal problems. They're so in touch with the common man. They really do know what the problems of our times are. Interestingly enough, they left out technology in the narrative, which I think is the center of one of the biggest problems we have. Technocracy. That would be something very interesting to explore within Watchmen, but that wouldn't fit their narrative, and they are going to try to push a narrative through the show just as Alan Moore did, but without any of the talent. There's no defeating white supremacy. It's not going away, especially if we pretend it's there more than it actually is, E.P. Lindelof explained of the hate groups that populate the 9-episode Watchmen. There are no easy answers and grandiose solutions, he added, noting this was not going to play out like your standard superhero saga on the small or big screen. Well, probably not, because it's written by Damon Lindelof. It'll be a mystery box filled with pretentious partisan politics. Set to debut in October, the Tulsa-based series focuses on King as a police officer in a world where cops wear masks. The Jeremy Irons-portrayed Ozymandias is in seclusion. A very liberal Robert Redford is the longest-serving POTUS ever. There are no internet or smartphones, and a killer cult has grown up around the now-dead Rorschach. Better start polishing off those Emmys because the groundbreaking Damon Lindelof is going to take another opportunity to crap on middle America, and he would never pass that up. And you know how much the PC creative elite love that in Hollywood. It's like catnip to them. And the character of Rorschach. They are going to center a hate group around that. I wonder how that's going to play out to the comic book fans. To those of you who haven't read the comic or watched the movie or don't know anything about it, Rorschach was the most popular character. And again, I believe normies will be confused with this one because it's a sequel to the comic books, which most people, I'm sorry to say, have not read. They have watched the movie though, and they're not going to understand the disconnect, and they'll probably feel lost, for lack of a better term. So let me get this straight. Damon Lindelof is creating a sequel to a TV show that nobody has watched. It is not supposed to be a world you recognize to Trojan horse themes that are in a real world in a fictional one, Lindelof asserted of the 2019 of the show. What is actual history and what is alt history, and things start to get blended in the middle. Keeping things circumspect, Lindelof fielded a lot of questions about Watchmen, the series connect to Watchmen, the classic. We are not going to mess with it. It's canon, he declared of the 12-issue run from 1986 and 1987, which directly contradicts what he said earlier. From the IndieWire article, Watchmen Damon Lindelof reveals plot will be an original story versus adaptation, apologizes to angry fans. From Ben Travers on May 22nd, 2018. We have no desire to adapt the 12 issues Mr. Moore and Mr. Gibbons created 30 years ago, he writes. Those issues are sacred ground, and they will not be retreated, nor recreated, nor reproduced, nor rebooted. They will, however, be remixed. Typical Jar Jar Abrams bad reboot mystery box skullduggery. However, Lindelof did admit his relationship with the notoriously prickly and private Moore, who has kept to his long ago announced intention to have nothing to do with adaptations of his work. As some may have noticed, Moore is not mentioned in any of HBO's press materials on the series, with only Gibbons noted as co-creator. I can guarantee you Alan Moore hates Lindelof as he hates everyone in Hollywood and most people in society. It's an ongoing wrestling match, Lindelof revealed candidly of feelings about Moore's feelings about Watchmen adaptations such as his, yet linking Moore and his work to the DIY do-it-yourself spirit of first-generation punk rock. Lindelof also said his attitude in the best spirit of V for Vendetta creator Moore is, F you guys, I'm doing it anyway. Dude, I am from the second generation of the DIY. I am Generation X. I was a little punk rocker back in the 80s. Dude, you are what we would call a poser. And guess what? Here within nerddom, you are a poser. You are the furthest thing from punk rock there is. You are everything punk rock was against. Set in an America where superheroes are outlaws and the radiated Dr. Manhattan still lives on the moon? I think you mean Mars. The loaded cast of Watchmen includes King, Irons, Don Johnson, Gene Smart, Tim Blake Nelson, Louis Gossett Jr., Yahya Abdul Mateen II, Hong Chow, Andrew Howard, Tom Misson, Francis Fisher, Jacob Ming Trent, Sarah Vickers, Dylan Schombing, and James Walk. But if that isn't woke enough for you, let's get to some of those character descriptions, including our main character, played by Regina King, Angela Abraham, African-American female cop, because all the cops in Hollywood are female, independent, and intelligent. She's also a realist. She's married to Cal, with whom she has a daughter, and is fiercely protective of them both. There is one scene in the original trailer where her husband asks if they are safe. Then it shows her teaching either her daughter or a young girl about racism. And then it shows her kicking ass on two guys twice her size. It also shows she is a superhero and a cop and a good mom, and I'm guessing she's pretty good at science. Cal Abraham, her husband, African-American male who is the stay-at-home husband of Angela. While he seems at home as the king of his castle and being a loving husband and father, it's clear his past has a different story to tell. So of course, as it is these days, the only flaw Angela will have is trusting a man. Looking Glass. A good-looking cop, the native Oklahoman isn't as simple as his rural accent makes him appear to be. A top interrogator and behavioral specialist, he also may be a bit of a psychopath and a toxic white male. Panda, an ethnic desk cop. He's cynical and tough and puts his job first. Not a friend to many, he uses comedy to keep people at bay. The Red Scare, which sounds like a stereotypical Russian, is mafioso and a tracksuit-wearing cop. Don't know how they figure that one out. His Russian accent lends to his abrasiveness. Pirate Jenny is going to check a few boxes here. An androgynous and lustful bisexual cop, Jenny is an anarchist at heart. Jane Crawford, the wife of the police chief Judd. Jane is a veterinarian who's sharper than her guarded persona lets on. Then there's Old Man, a former cop who is still an imposing figure despite his age. Well, it sounds like this is a cop drama. Again, a lot of people are going to be very confused that they're watching a sequel to the comic book, which most people, I'm sorry to say, haven't read. A lot of people have read it, but most people have not. But a lot of people have seen the film, and they're going to be thinking they're watching a sequel to that. But doesn't seem like HBO doesn't really care that much. It almost feels like it's a repurposed script a bit. Kind of like the Joker film. Who knows? They're doing that a lot these days because Hollywood is feeling the pressure because people only want to watch superhero films right now, but they're not going to want to watch this. This looks bloody awful. And yeah, we've got some callbacks. We see Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias. We've got Hooded Justice, and we have Dr. Manhattan. But knowing Lindelof and his mystery boxing, that imagery will be far and few between. And we will get much more of this because it looks like it's leaning heavily into 2015 politics. And instead of having a superhero show, which would have been much more interesting and applicable, having giant corporations suppressing free speech, filtering out opinions, suppressing free expression, pushing false narratives, manipulating the truth. But instead, we're going to get 2015 politics, and we're going to get more partisan politics, and they're going to push away more fans and alienate more fans. Although I don't think HBO cares, to be honest with you. I think they just play to their hardcore audience. But doing this with Watchmen is going to piss off a lot of comic book fans, but maybe they're already pissed off. But someday, when the franchises are in pieces, they're going to wonder what happened and maybe try to get some of us back, and we will whisper no.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.